I heard the laughter from the kitchen before I rounded the corner, my hands still damp from washing up after gardening. God, have you noticed that smell whenever you visit your mom's place? Vanessa's voice carried through the hallway, hushed, but not nearly quiet enough. It's that distinct old people smell, like mothballs and dusty potpourri. My son Andrew's response was muffled, but Vanessa's theatrical gagging sound came through perfectly clear. I froze beside the antique grandfather clock that had been my own mother's, apparently another relic contributing to my offending aroma. I swear I can smell it on my clothes after we visit, Vanessa continued, her voice dripping with disgust. I practically have to shower the moment we get home. I remained still, my heart pounding in my chest as I clutched the frame of the doorway. At 62, I was hardly decrepit. I still ran 3 miles every morning, maintained my garden, and chaired the local historical society. But to my daughter-in-law, I was just another unpleasant odor to be endured. Maybe we should get her some of those scented plug-ins, Vanessa suggested with a laugh. Or subtly gift her a nice perfume for her birthday next month. The irony was almost too perfect. The elegant bottle of Chanel sitting on my vanity was the same fragrance I'd worn for 30 years. A fragrance that apparently couldn't mask the offensive scent of aging in Vanessa's delicate nostrils. I cleared my throat loudly before stepping into the kitchen, watching guilt flash across both their faces. Andrew at least had the decency to look mortified. Vanessa's expression shifted almost instantly to her practiced smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes. "Margaret, there you are," she chirped, her voice suddenly 2 octaves higher. "We were just talking about that amazing dinner you made last Sunday." I set down my gardening gloves, allowing my eyes to linger on Vanessa's designer handbag carelessly, tossed on my kitchen counter. The same counter I'd paid to have renovated last spring after accidentally overhearing Vanessa complain to her sister on the phone about my depressingly outdated kitchen. "Were you?" I replied, maintaining my composure as I washed my hands in the sink. How lovely. Vanessa Calloway had entered our family 5 years ago, sweeping my son off his feet with her stunning looks and ambitious dreams. A marketing executive, with aspirations of launching her own agency, she'd talked of little else during their whirlwind courtship. "Mom, we actually came by to share some exciting news," Andrew said, eager to change the subject. My son, always the peacemaker, always trying to smooth over his wife's indiscretions. "Vanessa's starting her own marketing firm," he announced, wrapping an arm around his wife's shoulders. "She's been planning it for months, and she just signed the lease on an office space downtown." "Congratulations," I said, meeting Vanessa's eyes. "That's quite an undertaking. Starting a business requires substantial capital, doesn't it?" Vanessa's smile faltered slightly. "We've been saving," she replied, her manicured fingers absently stroking the leather of her $3,000 handbag. "And I've been approaching potential investors. It's all about having the right connections." I nodded, thinking of the email still open on my laptop upstairs, a confirmation from my investment manager about the transfer of $200,000 to Callaway Marketing LLC through one of my holding companies. The money had been moved yesterday, funneled through a series of obscure investment vehicles before reaching Vanessa's business account. "I'm sure you'll make it work," I said, turning to fill the kettle. "Tea, anyone?" "None for me," Vanessa said, quickly. "We need to get going. I'm meeting with a contractor about the office renovations this afternoon. Renovations I would be paying for, though she had no idea. The contractor, an old friend who'd helped me with several investment properties, had already been instructed to offer a substantial first-time business owner discount. The difference would be covered by a cashier's check from another of my LLCs. As they prepared to leave, I watched Vanessa collect her things, her sharp eyes taking in every detail of my home, the home where I'd raised Andrew after his father died, the home I'd maintained through decades of careful investment and hard work. "You know, Margaret," Vanessa said, pausing at the door, "you should come visit our new place sometime. We've done some redecorating I think you'd appreciate. Very contemporary. The subtle emphasis on the word made her meaning clear. Unlike my home with its old person smell. I'd love that, I replied with a smile that matched Vanessa's in insincerity. Though I'm quite busy these days with my various projects. Projects she knew nothing about. Projects like the thriving investment portfolio I'd built over 40 years. Or my position as the silent majority investor in Callaway Marketing LLC. After they left, I returned to my study, settling into the leather chair behind my desk. On the wall hung my diplomas, BA in Economics from Northwestern, MBA from Wharton, and various certifications acquired throughout my career in investment banking. Credentials Vanessa knew nothing about as I'd retired years before meeting her. Opened my laptop and checked my email. Another message from Thomas Richardson, my financial advisor. The shell company we'd established was now the official owner of the building Vanessa had just leased for her business. Her monthly rent payments would flow back into my investment account, minus a reasonable profit for the property management company, also owned by one of my holding companies. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, my assistant of 15 years, and one of the few people who knew the full extent of my financial empire. Callaway Marketing funding complete, all paperwork in place, building acquisition finalized. She has no idea. I smiled, remembering Vanessa's disdainful comments about my old person smell. Her business cards were being printed at this very moment by a printing company I'd acquired 6 months ago, shortly after overhearing her first mention of starting her own agency at a family dinner. The invoice would show a 50% discount for new business owners. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. I checked the security camera feed on my laptop to see Eleanor, my oldest friend, waiting on the porch with a bottle of wine. You actually did it? Eleanor asked 10 minutes later, shaking her head in disbelief as I explained the elaborate financial structure I'd created around Vanessa's new business venture. After everything she's said about you? I swirled the Cabernet in my glass, enjoying its rich aroma. Another sensory pleasure Vanessa probably thought beyond my aged capabilities. I did, I confirmed. Every permit, every license, every piece of equipment, all funded through my network of companies. She believes she's receiving new business incentives and first-time entrepreneur grants. But why, Margaret? Eleanor? Pressed. Why help someone who clearly doesn't respect you? I set down my glass. Because of Andrew, I said simply. And because I want to see what she's really made of. Is she actually talented? Can she build something worthwhile with the right backing? Or is she all talk and designer handbags? Eleanor had known me since our days at Northwestern, had stood beside me at Gregory's funeral 20 years ago, had watched me build my investment firm while raising Andrew alone. She knew I never made financial decisions based on emotion, and, if she fails? Eleanor asked. Then she fails on my dime, but Andrew will be protected. The business loans are structured through the holding companies. Their personal finances won't be touched. And if she succeeds? I smiled, thinking of the tracking analytics already installed on Callaway Marketing's new website, another service provided at a discount by one of my subsidiary companies. Then I make money, Andrew is happy, and Vanessa never needs to know that her success was built with the help of an old woman who smells like mothballs and dusty potpourri. Eleanor laughed, raising her glass. You always did play the long game, Margaret. But what's your endgame here? I thought about it, looking out at my carefully tended garden where Andrew had played as a child. I'm not entirely sure yet. Part of me wants to see how far she can go, thinking she's done it all herself. Part of me is waiting for the perfect moment to let her know exactly who's been backing her venture. And when will that moment come? I picked up my wine glass again. I'll know it when I see it. The following morning, I dressed carefully in a tailored Burberry suit, applied my signature, Chanel perfume, and drove downtown to meet with Thomas. From the coffee shop across the street, I watched the contractors, my contractors, carrying supplies into Vanessa's new office space. A text from Sarah confirmed that Vanessa had arrived 30 minutes earlier, supervising the renovations with her usual exacting standards. I smiled, imagining her deliberating over paint samples and furniture placements, believing herself to be the master of her destiny. Thomas joined me, setting a folder of documents on the table between us. "Everything's in place," he confirmed. "We've established the Marketing Industry Mentorship Program through the Maxwell Foundation." The Maxwell Foundation, named after my maiden name, was one of my more public philanthropic ventures, though few knew I was its primary benefactor. "And Vanessa has applied?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "She has," Thomas confirmed. "Her application was received yesterday. The committee will, of course, look very favorably upon it." The mentorship program would provide Callaway Marketing with industry connections, potential clients, and a nominal grant, all courtesy of my foundation. "What about the first client?" I asked. Thomas smiled. "Hendrix Innovation has agreed to become Callaway Marketing's first major client. The contract will be offered next week, once the office is set up." Hendrix Innovation was a tech startup I'd invested in 3 years ago. They needed marketing help, and I needed a way to ensure Vanessa's business got off to a strong start. The arrangement was mutually beneficial and completely opaque to Vanessa. "Perfect," I said, signing the documents Thomas had brought. "Keep me updated on any developments." As we finished our meeting, I glanced across the street to see Andrew arriving at Vanessa's office, carrying coffee and pastries. Always supportive, always proud of his wife's ambitions. I felt a surge of love for my son, mixed with a pang of sadness that he'd chosen a partner with such little respect for his mother. But perhaps that would change. Perhaps success would soften Vanessa's sharp edges. Or perhaps she would eventually face a moment of truth that would force her to recognize who had been standing in her corner all along. Either way, I would be watching, directing, investing, all from behind the scenes. The old lady with the offensive smell, quietly orchestrating the success of the woman who disdained her. My phone buzzed with a text from Andrew. "Office looks amazing, Mom. Wish you could see it. Vanessa's so excited. Dinner soon?" I smiled, texting. Back. "Looking forward to it. So proud of you both." And I was proud of Andrew's unwavering support for his wife, and of my own intricate game plan, unfolding exactly as I'd designed it. After all, I hadn't built a financial empire by accident. Every investment had a purpose, a strategy, an intended outcome, including my investment in Vanessa Callaway. Back at home, I checked my secure email to find a message from the head of the Maxwell Foundation Mentorship Committee, another old friend from my banking days. Vanessa's application had been forwarded to the final round. No surprises there. I opened my calendar and made a note for 3 months from now. Callaway Marketing Quarterly Review. That would be my first real evaluation of whether Vanessa had the talent to match her ambition, whether my investment in her business was merely protecting my son or actually backing a worthwhile enterprise. The kitchen still smelled faintly of the garden soil on my hands from yesterday. I wondered if Vanessa would wrinkle her nose at the earthy scent when she next visited, finding it another unpleasant reminder of my age. Little did she know that same soil had nourished the investments that were now nurturing her dreams. I smiled at the irony as I watered my prized orchids by the window. Some things improved with age. Fine wine, certain cheeses, investment strategies, and revenge when served at precisely the right moment. The next evening, my phone rang just as I was finishing a virtual board meeting for one of my larger investment properties. Andrew's name flashed on the screen. "Mom, you won't believe it." His voice was exuberant. Vanessa just landed her first major client, some tech company called Hendrix Innovation. It's a huge contract. "That's wonderful," I replied, keeping my tone measured despite knowing exactly how and why Hendrix had approached Callaway Marketing. "She must be thrilled." "She's over the moon. We're celebrating tonight." I wish you could join us, but it's a thing with her new business colleagues. Of course it was. Heaven forbid the old-smelling mother-in-law should embarrass Vanessa in front of her professional connections I had provided without her knowledge. Another time, I said. Give her my congratulations. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and checked the activity on the back end of Callaway Marketing's website. The analytics showed significant traffic, multiple contact form submissions, and engagement with the portfolio page, all generated by the SEO and digital marketing. Services provided by another of my subsidiary companies offered to Vanessa at a competitive rate for startups. I clicked through to the website's front end to see what Vanessa had created. I had to admit, it was impressive. Clean design, compelling copy, clear value proposition. Perhaps there was substance behind the ambition after all. My phone buzzed with an email notification. The Maxwell Foundation had officially accepted Vanessa into the mentorship program. She would receive the news tomorrow. Another piece moving into place on my chessboard. I leaned back in my chair, thinking about the months ahead. Vanessa would be riding high on her early success, believing it all stemmed from her own talent and hard work. And perhaps much of it did. I was providing opportunities, not ability. But the fact remained that every aspect of her new business existence was touched by my invisible hand. The building she leased, the renovations she commissioned, the equipment she purchased, the website she launched, the SEO that brought her traffic, the first client that would fund her initial months of operation, the mentorship program that would connect her with more clients. All made possible through my network of companies, foundations, and business associates, all orchestrated by the mother-in-law who smelled like old people. I closed my laptop and walked to the bedroom, passing the photos of Andrew through the years, as a toddler in the garden, graduating from high school, receiving his college diploma with me proudly at his side. In each image, I saw echoes of his father, my Gregory, gone now for 20 years, but still present in our son's smile, his thoughtful gaze, his kind heart. Gregory would have found my elaborate scheme either hilarious or concerning. Possibly both. Always 3 steps ahead, he used to say about my business strategies. Just make sure you don't forget why you're playing the game. I hadn't forgotten. This wasn't just about Vanessa's casual cruelty or my wounded pride. It was about protecting Andrew, about testing his wife's character and capabilities, about ensuring that the woman he had chosen would be worthy of him in the long run. As I prepared for bed, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unfamiliar number. I opened it to find a photo of Vanessa and Andrew toasting with champagne glasses, Vanessa's face alight with triumph. The message read, "Celebrating Callaway Marketing's first big client. Vanessa wanted to share the good news with family." I noticed I'd been included in a group text with several other relatives, an uncharacteristic move for Vanessa, who typically kept me at arm's length from her accomplishments. Perhaps success was already softening her edges, or perhaps she simply wanted an audience for her moment of glory. Either way, I texted back, "Congratulations, wishing you continued success." If only she knew just how personally invested I was in that success. The next morning, I met Sarah for breakfast at our usual cafe. My assistant had been with me for 15 years, transitioning from the corporate office to managing my personal investments when I'd officially retired from public business life. She knew every aspect of my financial empire and was one of the few people I trusted implicitly. "Vanessa received the mentorship acceptance this morning," Sarah reported, sliding her tablet across the table to show me the email confirmation. "And Hendrix Innovation signed the final contract yesterday afternoon." "Any reaction from our daughter-in-law?" I asked, stirring my coffee. Sarah smiled. "According to our contact at the foundation, she called immediately to express her gratitude and excitement. Apparently, she was overwhelmed by the opportunity. And she suspects nothing? Nothing at all. The foundation's reputation is impeccable, and the selection process appears entirely merit-based from the outside. She believes she earned this on her own. I nodded, satisfied. And the office renovations? Completed yesterday. The contractor followed your specifications exactly: high-quality materials, professional finish, but nothing ostentatious. Vanessa approved every detail, thinking she was getting exceptional value due to her negotiation skills. I smiled at that. Vanessa had always prided herself on her business acumen, never suspecting that in this case, the deals were designed to be accepted. My contractors had clear instructions: give her exactly what she wanted while maintaining the illusion that she was skillfully bargaining for better terms. "What's next on our agenda?" I asked. Sarah consulted her tablet. "The networking event. Next week. Vanessa has RSVP'd, and we've confirmed attendance from 3 potential clients who've been briefed to express interest in Callaway Marketing's services. The networking event, sponsored by another of my foundations, would put Vanessa in a room with carefully selected business owners, all primed to become future clients of her fledgling agency. And Andrew? How is he responding to all this?" Sarah's expression softened. "From what we can observe, he's incredibly supportive. He's been helping at the office after his own workday, bringing food during late nights, celebrating every small victory. He posted on LinkedIn yesterday about how proud he is of his wife's new venture. That was my Andrew. Always generous, always kind. The qualities that made him such a wonderful son sometimes made him vulnerable to those who might take advantage of his good nature. People like Vanessa. I've also prepared the quarterly financial projection for Callaway Marketing," Sarah continued, passing me another document. "Based on the Hendricks contract and the potential clients lined up through the mentorship program, she should break even in 4 months and show a modest profit by the 6-month mark." I reviewed the numbers, noting the careful balance. The business would appear successful enough to validate Vanessa's efforts, but not so immediately profitable as to raise suspicions. The growth curve looked natural, believable, the typical trajectory of a talented entrepreneur who catches a few lucky breaks. "Perfect," I said, handing back the tablet. "Continue as planned, and make sure the monitoring systems remain undetectable. Every computer, every phone line, every digital transaction at Callaway Marketing was quietly tracked through the IT services provider, another company in my network. I could see every email Vanessa sent, every proposal she drafted, every invoice she issued. Not because I intended to interfere with her day-to-day operations, but because information was power, and I had no intention of ceding power to my daughter-in-law. As we finished breakfast, my phone rang. Andrew again. "Mom, are you free for dinner tonight? At our place? Vanessa's cooking." The invitation surprised me. Vanessa rarely volunteered to host me for dinner, preferring to meet at restaurants where our visits could be kept to a precise time frame. "I'd love to," I replied, curiosity piqued. "What time?" 7. And Mom. Vanessa got some really exciting news today about a mentorship program. She's really on a roll with this business thing. "How wonderful," I said, catching Sarah's eye across the table. "I look forward to hearing all about it." After ending the call, I raised an eyebrow at Sarah. "Dinner at their place. Vanessa's cooking. Something's up." Sarah nodded. "She's riding high. 2 big wins in 2 days, the Hendricks contract and the mentorship acceptance. She probably wants to showcase her success." To the old lady, she mocks. "Behind her back," I added, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "Play the long game, Margaret," Sarah reminded me gently. "Remember why you're doing this." She was right, of course. This wasn't about petty retribution. It was about something much more important: my son's future, his happiness, the integrity of the family I'd worked so hard to provide for. "I always do," I replied, gathering my things. "The long game is the only one worth playing." As I drove home to prepare for the evening, I considered what this dinner invitation might mean. Was Vanessa simply feeling magnanimous in her success? Or was there something more strategic at play? Either way, I would arrive at 7, smelling of expensive Chanel and decades of business acumen that had made her dream possible. Not that she knew that part yet. But someday, when the moment was right, she would learn exactly who had been pulling the strings behind her meteoric rise, and I would be watching very carefully to see how she handled that revelation. At precisely 7 o'clock, I pressed the doorbell of Andrew and Vanessa's downtown condominium, a sleek modern space I'd helped them purchase through an unexpected year-end bonus at Andrew's firm. Another of my quiet manipulations that Vanessa had unknowingly benefited from. I'd dressed strategically for the evening, a cashmere Eileen Fisher ensemble in deep burgundy that projected understated wealth, accessorized with a simple strand of pearls that had been my mother's. Professional but not intimidating, successful but not showy. And of course, a subtle application of Chanel. Andrew opened the door, his face breaking into a genuine smile. "Mom, right on time as always." He embraced me warmly, and I caught a whiff of his aftershave, the one I'd gifted him last Christmas. "Something smells wonderful," I remarked as he took my coat. "Vanessa's making her famous rosemary chicken," he replied, leading me into their open-concept living area where floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city lights. The condo had been transformed since my last visit. New artwork adorned the walls, a sleek sectional replaced their previous sofa, and dramatic lighting fixtures created a sophisticated ambiance. All very contemporary, very design-forward, and likely very expensive. Vanessa emerged from the kitchen, wearing a designer dress with an apron carefully positioned to protect it. Her smile seemed almost genuine tonight, fueled perhaps by the confidence of her recent successes. "Margaret, thank you for coming." She air-kissed near both my cheeks, a habit she'd adopted after a business trip to Paris last year. "Wine? I've opened a lovely Cabernet." "Thank you," I replied, accepting the glass she offered. The wine was excellent, a vintage I recognized from an exclusive vineyard I'd invested in a decade ago. Vanessa's taste was improving, though her salary at her previous firm couldn't have supported such expensive preferences. No doubt Andrew was indulging her with his own income, unaware that his recent performance bonuses had been carefully orchestrated through my connections on his company's board. "Congratulations on your new business venture," I said, raising my glass in a toast. "Andrew tells me you've already secured your first major client." Vanessa's face lit up with genuine pride. "Yes, Hendrix Innovation. They're an up-and-coming tech firm with amazing potential. They approached me just days after I launched. Talk about lucky timing. Lucky indeed." I thought of the carefully worded email I'd approved, instructing Hendrix marketing director to discover Callaway marketing and express immediate interest. "And that's not all," Vanessa continued, unable to contain her excitement. "I was accepted into the Maxwell Foundation's Executive Mentorship Program. It's incredibly competitive. They only take 10 new business owners each cycle." "How impressive," I murmured, sipping my wine. "You must have made quite an impression." "The foundation called my application exceptionally promising," Vanessa preened, oblivious to the fact that I'd personally edited the acceptance letter. "They're connecting me with some of the top marketing executives in the country, all of whom were former colleagues, current business partners, or significant beneficiaries of my various philanthropic ventures. Your mother-in-law is being modest about her own accomplishments," Andrew interjected, putting an arm around my shoulders. "Mom ran her own successful consulting firm for years before retiring." Vanessa's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. We'd never discussed my professional background in detail, partly because she'd never asked, and partly because I'd deliberately maintained a low profile about my business acumen. My consulting firm had actually been Maxwell Investment Partners, a boutique investment bank that had managed billions in assets before I'd sold my stake and transitioned to private investing. Just a small operation, I demurred, playing along with the fiction. Nothing like what you're building, Vanessa. She relaxed visibly, her ego soothed by the implication that her achievements already surpassed mine. Well, I'm sure business has changed quite a bit since your day. Everything's digital now, social media, content marketing, analytics. I imagine so, I agreed mildly, not mentioning that 3 of the largest digital marketing platforms in the country had been seeded with my venture capital, or that I currently sat on the board of a major social media analytics company. Dinner was served with a flourish. The rosemary chicken was admittedly excellent, paired with roasted vegetables and a quinoa pilaf that reflected Vanessa's health-conscious sensibilities. "This is delicious," I complimented sincerely. "You've always had a talent for entertaining, Vanessa." She accepted the praise with a nod, topping off my wine glass. "It's important in business to know how to host properly. I'll be doing a lot. More of it now that I have my own firm. Client dinners, networking events. It's all part of building the brand." "Speaking of which," Andrew said, "tell Mom about your office space. The renovations look amazing." Vanessa launched into a detailed description of her new business headquarters, the exposed brick walls, the custom lighting, the ergonomic furniture. Each element she proudly described had been facilitated through my network. The contractor who'd offered the industry discount, the furniture dealer who'd provided promotional pricing, the lighting designer who'd given a first-time business owner rate. "It sounds perfect," I said when she finally paused for breath. "Very professional." "It is," she agreed. "Though the startup costs were significant. Thankfully, I've been extremely resourceful. You wouldn't believe the deals I've negotiated." I bit back a smile. "I'm sure you have." "It's all about knowing your value and refusing to settle," Vanessa continued, warming to her favorite topic, herself. "Too many women undersell themselves in business," a familiar refrain. In Vanessa's worldview, her success was entirely attributable to her exceptional talents, while others' failures stemmed from their personal shortcomings. The possibility that factors beyond merit, like privilege, connections, or in her current case, a secretly supportive mother-in-law, might influence outcomes rarely entered her consideration. "How are you financing the venture?" I asked innocently. "Starting a business requires significant capital." A flash of annoyance crossed Vanessa's face before she composed herself. "We've been saving for years, and I've been very strategic about managing cash flow. The Hendricks contract will cover operating expenses while I build the client base." Andrew beamed at her with obvious pride. "Vanessa's always been brilliant with finances. She has spreadsheets for everything. If only he knew about my spreadsheets. The ones detailing every dollar funneled into Callaway marketing through my labyrinthine network of companies and foundations." "And what about your long-term strategy?" I pressed gently. "The first year of a new business can be challenging." "I have a comprehensive 5-year plan," Vanessa replied with confidence born of ignorance. "By year 3, I project we'll need to expand to larger offices and hire at least 10 full-time employees." "Ambitious," I remarked, knowing that the unexpected opportunities I'd already lined up would likely accelerate that timeline significantly. "I hope you factored in contingencies." Something flickered in Vanessa's eyes. A moment of uncertainty, quickly masked by determination. "Of course, I've run multiple scenarios, but not the scenario where her mother-in-law was pulling strings behind the scenes, orchestrating her apparent success while documenting every interaction, every decision, every careless comment about old people smell." After dinner, Andrew insisted on handling cleanup, leaving Vanessa and me alone in the living room with our wine. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us until she finally spoke. "I wanted to ask you something, Margaret." I raised an eyebrow. "Waiting. The Maxwell Foundation." She hesitated, uncharacteristically tentative. I was doing some research on their board members, and I noticed a Maxwell Investment Partners listed as one of their founding donors. Any relation to you? A frisson of alarm ran through me. Had she discovered the connection already? I'd been so careful to obscure my involvement. My maiden name is Maxwell, I acknowledged carefully. But it's a common enough name. Vanessa nodded, seemingly satisfied with the non-answer. That's what I figured. Just a coincidence. I sipped my wine, relieved but also impressed by her diligence. Perhaps there was more substance to Vanessa than I'd given her credit for. Actually, there was something else I wanted to discuss, she continued, setting down her glass. Andrew and I have been talking about starting a family soon. The statement caught me off guard. In 5 years of marriage, Vanessa had shown little interest in children, focusing instead on her career ambitions. That's wonderful, I said cautiously. Andrew would make an excellent father. Yes, he would, she agreed. And we've been thinking about the future, about creating stability, building something to pass on to our children. I nodded, wondering where this was leading. We know you've been very comfortable since Father's retirement and passing, she continued, using the formal term she always employed for my late husband, a man she'd never met. Andrew rarely speaks about family finances, but I understand there may be some inheritance expectations. And there it was, the real purpose of tonight's dinner invitation. Not to celebrate her business success, but to assess her potential claim on my estate. I've provided for Andrew in my will, of course, I replied evenly. As any mother would. Of course, Vanessa echoed, her tone just a shade too eager. It's just that with the business launch and family planning, we're thinking about the big picture, long-term security. I studied her face, noting the calculation behind her practiced smile. Was her sudden interest in starting a family genuine, or simply another strategic move to secure her financial future? The best security comes from building something of your own, I said finally. As you're doing with your business. Before she could respond, Andrew returned from the kitchen. Who's ready for dessert? Vanessa made her famous tiramisu. The moment passed, but the conversation lingered in my mind as we finished the evening with coffee and dessert. Vanessa had revealed an important piece of information. She was thinking about the future, about legacy and inheritance, about my money. As I drove home later that night, I called Sarah on the car's Bluetooth. How was dinner? My assistant asked. Illuminating, I replied. Vanessa's been researching the Maxwell Foundation, and she's suddenly interested in starting a family, right after asking about Andrew's inheritance. Sarah was silent for a moment. Do you think she suspects your involvement in her business? No, I said confidently. She accepted my deflection about the Maxwell name, but she's clearly thinking about long-term financial security, my security to be specific. Should we adjust the strategy? I considered the question as I navigated the quiet streets toward home. No, but add another layer of monitoring. I want to know if she continues investigating the foundation's backers or makes any other inquiries into my finances. Will do, Sarah confirmed. And the business operations? Proceed as planned. Let's give Vanessa enough success to keep her confident, but not enough to make her suspicious. And Sarah, schedule a meeting with my estate attorney next week. I think it's time to review my will. The following day, I received a text from Andrew. Mom, thanks for coming to dinner. Vanessa really enjoyed talking with you. I smiled at the polite fiction. Vanessa had tolerated my presence while probing for financial information and showcasing her success I had engineered. It was lovely, I texted back. Vanessa is quite accomplished. You must be very proud. An hour later, my phone rang. Thomas, my financial advisor. We may have a situation, he said without preamble. Someone's been making inquiries about the ownership structure of the Maxwell Foundation. My grip tightened on the phone. Vanessa? No, a law firm. Brenner and Associates. They specialize in estate planning and asset recovery. I closed my eyes, processing this new information. When were these inquiries made? Yesterday afternoon, before your dinner. So Vanessa had consulted an attorney before raising the inheritance. Question with me. The dinner conversation hadn't been a casual inquiry. It had been reconnaissance. What exactly are they looking for? I asked. Ownership records, board minutes, founding documents. They're being thorough but trying to stay under the radar. And what will they find? Thomas's voice held a note of satisfaction. Nothing that leads back to you directly. The foundation's structure is impeccable. Multiple layers of legal entities, offshore components, blind trusts. They might suspect connections, but they can't prove anything without inside information. Keep me informed of any further inquiries, I instructed. And Thomas? Implement Protocol Firewall on all Maxwell Foundation activities. Protocol Firewall was our contingency plan for potential exposure, a predetermined set of actions designed to further obscure connections between my personal finances and the Foundation's activities. After ending the call, I sat in my study, reassessing my strategy. Vanessa was more proactive and potentially more dangerous than I'd anticipated. If she was already investigating my assets, what else might she be planning? I opened my laptop and accessed the secure server where we monitored Callaway Marketing's communications. A quick search revealed nothing unusual in Vanessa's business emails, but when I checked her personal account, the one she thought was private, but which our IT systems had quietly compromised, I found what I was looking for. An email exchange with Brenner and Associates, confirming a consultation appointment that had taken place yesterday morning. The subject line read, Family Trust Investigation. So Vanessa wasn't just idly curious about her potential inheritance. She was actively investigating my estate with professional help. The timing, just as her business was launching, couldn't be coincidental. Was Callaway Marketing merely a stepping stone in a larger plan? A way to establish herself professionally while positioning for a greater prize, my fortune? I closed the laptop, troubled by the implications. Perhaps I'd been too subtle in my approach. Perhaps it was time to accelerate certain aspects of my plan. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Networking event confirmed for Thursday. All target clients confirmed attendance. Vanessa RSVP'd this morning. The event would be Vanessa's introduction to the upper echelons of the local business community, a carefully curated group that included several of my long-standing business associates, all briefed to express interest in Callaway Marketing's services without revealing their connections to me. Proceed as planned, I texted back, but add Jameson to the guest list. Richard Jameson was my attorney, a shrewd legal mind who had managed my business affairs for decades. His presence at the networking event would serve two purposes: to observe Vanessa in a professional setting, and to send a subtle message that I had powerful connections of my own. The pieces were moving faster now, the game becoming more complex. Vanessa was revealing herself to be a more formidable opponent than I'd initially judged, less interested in building a legitimate business than in positioning herself to access my wealth. But I had decades of experience in strategic planning, in anticipating moves and countermoves. If Vanessa thought she could outmaneuver me, she was about to learn a valuable lesson about underestimating an old woman with the scent of mothballs and dusty potpourri. Later that afternoon, I met Eleanor for our weekly walk in the botanical gardens. As we strolled through the orchid collection, I recounted the dinner conversation and my subsequent discoveries. So she's investigating your assets while accepting your covert help with her business, Eleanor summarized, shaking her head. That's a special kind of audacity. It's calculating, I corrected. Vanessa has always been strategic. I just hadn't realized how ambitious her strategy might be. What are you going to do? I paused beside a particularly magnificent phalaenopsis, orchid, a rare variety I'd donated to the garden years ago. I'm going to give her exactly what she wants, success, connections, opportunity. And I'm going to document every step, every decision, every manipulation. To what end, Margaret? What's your goal here? I considered the question carefully. Initially, it was about testing her, seeing if she had the talent to match her ambition, the character to deserve Andrew's devotion. Now I think it's about protection. Protecting Andrew? Protecting everything. My son, my legacy, the fortune I've built. I turned to face Eleanor. If Vanessa is investigating my estate while launching a business I'm secretly funding, she's playing a dangerous game, and I need to understand exactly what she's after. Eleanor frowned. Have you considered simply cutting off the funding? Letting her business fail naturally? And punish Andrew in the process? No. I shook my head. Besides, that would be too obvious, too reactive. I need to see this through, to understand precisely what Vanessa is capable of, both professionally and personally. Be careful, Eleanor warned. Games like this have a way of escalating beyond our control. I'm always careful, I assured her, though a small voice in the back of my mind acknowledged the risk. By inserting myself so thoroughly into Vanessa's business affairs, I had created potential exposure. If she discovered my involvement prematurely, before I was ready to reveal it on my own terms, the consequences could be unpredictable. But I had never built wealth by avoiding calculated risks. And the potential reward, truly understanding my daughter-in-law's character and protecting my son from potential exploitation, justified the gambit. That evening, I reviewed the latest financial reports from Callaway Marketing with Sarah. The business was performing exactly as we'd engineered. Successful enough to appear promising, not so successful as to seem suspicious. The Hendricks contract is proceeding on schedule, Sarah noted, and 3 more potential clients from our network have requested proposals following initial meetings. Good, I approved. What about the mentorship program? Vanessa's first session is scheduled for tomorrow. Her mentor is Catherine Benson. I nodded with satisfaction. Catherine was a former protégé of mine, a brilliant marketing executive who had benefited from my guidance early in her career and now ran one of the most successful agencies in the region. She understood exactly what information to share with Vanessa and what to withhold. And the monitoring systems? I asked. All functioning as designed. We have complete visibility into Callaway Marketing's operations, communications, and finances. I leaned back in my chair, contemplating our next move. What about Vanessa's personal activities? Any further contact with Brenner and Associates? Sarah consulted her tablet. A follow-up email this morning requesting additional information about family trust structures and asset tracing methodologies. They've scheduled another consultation for next week. So Vanessa was pursuing her investigation aggressively, even as she built her business with my concealed assistance. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was using resources I provided to investigate how to access more of my resources. We need to be prepared for every contingency, I decided. Draft a complete dossier documenting our involvement in Callaway Marketing's creation and operation. Every dollar invested, every connection facilitated, every opportunity engineered. I want it comprehensive, irrefutable, and legally sound. Sarah looked up from her tablet. Are you planning to confront her? Not yet, I replied. But when the moment comes, and it will, I want to be fully armed with the truth. The truth that Vanessa's success was built on the foundation provided by an old woman she disdained. The truth that her business existed because of my intervention. The truth that every client, every contract, every lucky break had been carefully orchestrated by the mother-in-law she mocked for smelling like mothballs and dusty potpourri. And Sarah, I added as she prepared to leave, schedule a dinner. With Andrew, just the 2 of us. I think it's time I learned more about my son's long-term plans. After Sarah departed, I stood at my study window, watching darkness settle over the garden Gregory and I had planted together 30 years ago. The Japanese maple he'd selected had grown magnificent with age, its branches elegant against the twilight sky. Some things improved with time, developing complexity and character that couldn't be rushed or manufactured. Wisdom was one such quality, the ability to see beyond immediate appearances, to recognize patterns and anticipate consequences. Vanessa, for all her ambition and calculation, lacked this quality. She saw only the surface, an aging mother-in-law, a potential inheritance, a business opportunity. She failed to perceive the deeper currents, the invisible connections, the strategic mind that had spent decades building a financial empire. That blindness would be her undoing. Not because I wished her to fail, but because true success required something she had yet to demonstrate: integrity, humility, and the capacity to value people for more than their utility. As night fell completely, I closed the curtains and turned back to my desk. The game was accelerating, the stakes rising. Vanessa was making her moves, unaware that every step she took had been anticipated, every path she followed carefully prepared. Soon would come the moment of truth, the revelation that would test her character more thoroughly than any business challenge ever could. And when that moment arrived, I would be watching very carefully to see how she responded, because that response would determine everything that followed. Thursday evening arrived with perfect autumn weather, crisp and clear, ideal for the networking event at the Westbrook Hotel's grand ballroom. I arrived early, as was my habit, to observe the setup and ensure everything was proceeding according to plan. The Maxwell Foundation's logo was tastefully displayed on banners and digital screens throughout the space, a stylized M that echoed the logo of my old investment firm, though few would make the connection. Sarah met me at the private entrance, tablet in hand. "Everything is in place," she confirmed, guiding me through the service corridor to a small monitoring room adjacent to the ballroom. 28 confirmed attendees, including all 7 target clients for Callaway marketing. The monitoring room offered discreet views of the main event space through one-way glass, an arrangement I'd insisted on when donating to the hotel's renovation 5 years ago. Few knew of its existence, and fewer still had access. Tonight, it would allow me to observe Vanessa without being immediately visible. "Richard Jameson arrived early," Sarah noted. "He's been briefed on the situation and understands his role." I nodded, watching his catering staff arranged elaborate hors d'oeuvres on silver platters. "And Vanessa?" "Her calendar shows she's planning to arrive at 6:30, fashionably on time. Andrew won't be attending. He has a work commitment." "Perfect." Vanessa would be navigating the event solo, without my son as a buffer. "The foundation director will introduce her to the first target client 10 minutes after her arrival," Sarah continued. "Catherine Benson is also attending as her official mentor and will facilitate 3 additional introductions." I settled into a comfortable chair positioned to view the entire ballroom. Let's see how she handles herself. By 6:15, guests had begun to arrive. A carefully curated selection of business leaders, entrepreneurs, and philanthropists, most with direct or indirect connections to my various enterprises. I recognized familiar faces, board members, from companies I'd invested in, executives I'd mentored, beneficiaries of foundation grants I'd approved, all present because I'd wanted them here. All prepared to express interest in Callaway marketing services without revealing their connection to me. Richard Jameson entered at 6:20, distinguished in a tailored suit, his silver hair lending him an air of authority. He circulated easily among the early arrivals, exchanging greetings, his eyes occasionally darting to the one-way glass where he knew I was watching. At precisely 6:30, Vanessa made her entrance. I had to admit, she looked impressive, poised and professional. In a midnight blue suit that projected confidence without ostentation, her hair was styled in a sleek chignon, her makeup flawless, her posture commanding attention without demanding it. Whatever her flaws, Vanessa understood the importance of presentation. The foundation director, another of my former protégés, greeted her warmly, seamlessly integrating her into a small group that included the CEO of Meridian Technologies, one of our primary target clients. Through the specialized audio system, I could hear their conversation clearly. "Vanessa Calloway, this is James Wilson, CEO of Meridian Technologies," the director introduced. "James, Vanessa has just launched an innovative marketing agency specializing in tech sector branding." "Perfect timing," Wilson replied, offering his hand. "We've been discussing a brand refresh for months. Our current agency doesn't quite understand the tech space." Vanessa's response was pitch perfect. Confident without being aggressive, knowledgeable without being pedantic. Within minutes, she'd secured Wilson's business card and a promise to meet the following week. "She's good," Sarah acknowledged, watching from beside me. "Natural networker." I nodded, genuinely impressed despite myself. Vanessa navigated the room with practiced ease, making connections, exchanging cards, following up on introductions with pertinent questions and thoughtful observations. By 7:15, she had engaged with 3 of our target clients and appeared to have made favorable impressions on each. Her business aptitude is undeniable, I conceded. If only her character matched her capabilities. At 7:30, Richard Jameson strategically positioned himself near the wine bar where Vanessa was refilling her glass. "Excellent turnout," he commented casually. "The Maxwell Foundation always hosts impressive events." Vanessa turned, assessing him with a quick professional glance. "Indeed. Are you a foundation board member, Mr. Jameson, Richard Jameson?" "And no, merely a longtime supporter." He offered his hand. "Jameson Legal Partners." A flash of recognition crossed Vanessa's face, subtle but unmistakable. Clearly, she'd encountered his name during her research into my financial affairs. "Vanessa Calloway, Calloway Marketing," she replied, recovering smoothly. "Have you been involved with the foundation long, Mr. Jameson?" "Since its inception," he answered truthfully. "I had the privilege of assisting with its establishment. A remarkable organization with an interesting ownership structure." Vanessa's attention sharpened visibly at the mention of ownership. "I've been learning about the foundation since being accepted into their mentorship program. The impact they've had on the business community is impressive. Indeed, almost as impressive as their founder." Richard sipped his wine. "A brilliant strategic mind. Very few people truly understand the scope of their influence." "I'd love to learn more," Vanessa said, her casual tone belied by the intensity of her gaze. "Perhaps your firm could provide some insights? I'm always interested in connecting with established legal practices." Richard smiled politely. "We're quite selective with our client list these days, but I'm sure we could arrange a consultation." The conversation shifted to more general topics, but I'd seen enough. Vanessa was actively pursuing information about the foundation, recognizing its potential connection to me and my assets. Richard had planted the seed of intrigue perfectly, offering just enough to pique her interest without revealing anything substantive. By 9 o'clock, the event was winding down, and Vanessa had accomplished precisely what we'd arranged for her. To accomplish, she'd connected with all 7 target clients, secured meetings with 5, and established her presence within the business community. A successful evening by any measure, orchestrated entirely behind the scenes. As she departed, I watched her check her phone and smile with satisfaction, no doubt messaging Andrew about her networking triumph. "She has no idea," Sarah murmured, beside me. No idea at all that every handshake was arranged, every introduction planned, every opportunity engineered. "That's the point," I replied, rising from my observation post. "Let's see what she does with these opportunities before we decide on our next move." Richard joined us in the monitoring room after the last guests had departed. "She's asking questions about the foundation," he confirmed. Very pointed questions about its establishment and governance. Did she mention me specifically? I asked. Not by name, but the implication was clear. She's connecting dots, Margaret, or trying to. I nodded, unsurprised. And her approach? How would you assess it? Richard considered the question. Calculated. Deliberate. She was careful not to appear too interested, but her questions were precise, the kind that reveal a predetermined agenda. An agenda focusing on my assets and estate, I concluded, most likely. She has the instincts of someone tracing financial connections. Not unlike yourself, actually. I raised an eyebrow at the comparison, but couldn't entirely dismiss it. In another context, under different circumstances, I might have appreciated Vanessa's strategic mind. Her determination, her attention to detail, qualities that mirrored my own, but they were being deployed against me, with my son potentially caught in the crossfire. The dossier is nearly complete, Sarah reported as we departed through the service exit. Full documentation of every aspect of our involvement in Callaway marketing. When you're ready to reveal the truth, we'll have irrefutable evidence. Good, I approved. Now let's see what Vanessa does with tonight's opportunities. The answer came faster than anticipated. By noon the following day, Vanessa had already scheduled meetings with 4 of the 7 target clients, sent detailed follow-up emails to the others, and posted a carefully crafted LinkedIn update about the inspiring connections made at the Maxwell Foundation event. Sarah forwarded the activity reports to my secure email. She's moving quickly. Meridian Technologies has already requested a formal proposal. As expected, I replied. Forward the analytics from her website and email campaigns. I want to see how she's positioning her services. The data revealed a sophisticated marketing approach, professional, targeted, and surprisingly nuanced. Vanessa clearly understood her potential clients' needs and had tailored her messaging accordingly. Her proposal to Meridian Technologies, which our monitoring systems had captured, was comprehensive and compelling. Despite myself, I was impressed. Whatever Vanessa's personal failings, her condescension, her casual cruelty, her calculating approach to my family and fortune, she possessed genuine talent in her chosen field. Which raised an uncomfortable question. Would she have succeeded without my intervention? Was I supporting a legitimate business with growth potential, or merely propping up a mediocre enterprise that would have failed without my invisible hand? The answer mattered, not just for my strategic planning, but for my understanding of who exactly my daughter-in-law was. I decided to test the question directly. That afternoon, I called an old associate, Trevor Hamilton, CEO of a regional healthcare network that had been on our target list for Callaway marketing. Trevor, I need an honest assessment, I explained after exchanging pleasantries. Vanessa, Callaway will be contacting you about marketing services. Evaluate her proposal purely on its merits without the connection to me. If it's substandard, decline it. Just let me know why. If it's competitive, proceed as if I weren't involved. Completely objective evaluation, Trevor confirmed. May I ask why? I'm testing a theory, I replied, offering no further explanation. Trevor, who had benefited from my financial backing during a critical expansion phase of his business, didn't press for details. With that contingency in place, I turned my attention to the dinner I'd arranged with Andrew. We'd scheduled to meet at Castellanos, an upscale Italian restaurant where the private dining rooms ensured discretion. I arrived early, as usual, selecting a quiet corner table with a view of the entrance. Andrew arrived precisely on time, looking so much like his father that my heart clenched momentarily. The same thoughtful eyes, the same gentle smile, Gregory's best qualities, preserved in our son. Mom, he greeted warmly, embracing me before taking his seat. This is a nice surprise. We don't get enough one-on-one time these days. My fault. Entirely, I replied. genuinely regretful of how my elaborate scheme had consumed my attention recently. I've been preoccupied with various projects. After ordering, Andrew shared updates about his work, the architectural firm where he'd been steadily advancing, his recent projects, his hopes for a partnership track. I listened attentively, proud of his accomplishments, his integrity, his quiet determination to succeed on his own merits, so different from Vanessa's approach. "And how are things with Vanessa's new business?" I asked as our main courses arrived. She seemed quite excited at dinner the other night. Andrew's face lit up with pride. "It's incredible, Mom. Everything's happening so fast for her. That networking event yesterday? She's already got meetings lined up with major potential clients." "How wonderful," I murmured, sipping my wine. "She must be very talented." "She is," he confirmed earnestly. "But it's more than that. She's been catching these amazing breaks. The mentorship program, that first big client, now all these connections. It's like the universe is conspiring to help her succeed." Not the universe, I thought. Just a mother trying to protect her son while testing her daughter-in-law's character. "Sometimes timing is everything in business," I offered. "Being in the right place at the right moment." Andrew nodded. "Vanessa says the same thing. She always seems to find herself in exactly the right place. Because I'd arranged it that way, positioned every opportunity, orchestrated every lucky break." "And how are you feeling about her success?" I asked carefully. "Is it changing your dynamic at all?" Andrew considered the question. "It's been adjustment. She's working longer hours, of course. More stressed some days, more elated others. But mostly, I'm just proud of her. She's wanted this for so long." "And the future?" I probed gently. "Where do you see yourselves in 5 years?" A shadow crossed his face, brief but unmistakable. "That's been a topic of discussion recently. Vanessa's talking about starting a family, which is great. I've always wanted children." "But?" I prompted, sensing his hesitation. "But sometimes, I wonder if we want the same things, long-term." He shrugged, trying to appear casual. "Vanessa's very focused on building wealth, securing our future, which is important, of course, but there's more to life than financial security." I finished for him. "Exactly." Relief filled his expression at being understood. "Dad always said money was just a tool, not a purpose. I believe that too." Gregory's wisdom, living on in our son. My late husband had been successful in business but never defined by it. A perspective I'd struggled to maintain at times, but had ultimately embraced. "Vanessa seems particularly interested in financial planning lately," Andrew continued, confirming my suspicions. "She's been asking about family assets, inheritance structures, estate planning. All important topics, but sometimes it feels like I don't know." "Calculating?" I suggested. He winced but didn't disagree. "I just wish she'd focus more on building our life together and less on maximizing our potential resources." The conversation had revealed exactly what I'd suspected but hoped wasn't true. Andrew was aware of Vanessa's preoccupation with wealth, with inheritance, with financial gain. And it troubled him, even as he supported her ambitions. "Have you shared these concerns with her?" I asked. "I've tried," he sighed. "But she insists she's just being practical, looking out for our future children. Children that would further secure her position in my family, her claim to my estate. Give it time," I advised, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "New businesses are all-consuming. Perhaps once Callaway marketing is established, Vanessa's priorities will shift." Andrew smiled gratefully, but the worry lingered in his eyes. "I hope so, Mom." The remainder of dinner passed pleasantly enough, though my mind was racing with implications. Andrew wasn't blind to Vanessa's machinations. He recognized her fixation on financial matters, her strategic approach to securing wealth. But his fundamentally kind nature led him to attribute the best possible motives to her behavior. He wanted to believe his wife was simply practical, prudent, planning for their future together. Not calculating, manipulative, positioning herself to maximize her access to the family fortune. As we parted outside the restaurant, Andrew hugged me tightly. "Thanks for listening, Mom. It helps to talk these things through." "Any time," I assured him. That's what mothers are for. Driving home, I called Sarah. "Have there been any developments with Vanessa's legal inquiries?" "Yes," my assistant confirmed. "She had another consultation with Brenner and Associates this afternoon. According to our sources, they discussed trust penetration strategies and asset tracing methodologies." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. She's becoming more aggressive in her investigation. Should we intervene? I considered the question carefully. Not yet. Let's see how far she's willing to go, how much she's willing to risk. Has she attempted to access any of my financial records directly? Not that we've detected, but her internet. Search history shows research on family trust structures, inheritance tax strategies, and methods for challenging estate provisions. So Vanessa was preparing for a potential legal battle over my assets she believed would eventually flow to Andrew, but which she wanted to ensure would benefit her directly. "Continue monitoring all channels," I instructed. "And Sarah? Accelerate the documentation process. I want our complete dossier ready within the week." The following morning brought an unexpected development. Trevor Hamilton called, his tone thoughtful. "I've reviewed Callaway Marketing's proposal," he reported. "It's surprisingly good, Margaret. Creative approach, solid strategy, competitive pricing. If I didn't know about your connection, I'd seriously consider hiring them." "So, her work has legitimate merit," I mused, processing this information. "Absolutely. There's real talent there. Not revolutionary, but certainly professional and effective." "Thank you for the honest assessment," I said, ending the call with much to consider. Vanessa was demonstrating genuine business acumen, developing compelling proposals, building client relationships, creating professional marketing strategies. The networking connections I'd arranged for her would have been worthless if she couldn't convert them into actual clients with her own skills, which meant she wasn't merely riding on my covert support. She was leveraging it effectively, applying real talent to the opportunities I'd engineered. The revelation complicated my evaluation. I had expected either to expose a fraud, someone whose business success was entirely dependent on my manipulation, or to discover a genuine entrepreneur being held back by circumstance. Instead, I was finding something more nuanced. A talented professional whose ambition extended beyond business success to encompass my entire estate, who viewed her marriage to Andrew as a strategic alliance rather than a love match. She wanted success, yes, but she also wanted my money, my assets, my legacy. And she was pursuing both goals with calculated precision. That afternoon, Sarah arrived at my home with an update from our monitoring systems. "Vanessa's been busy," she reported, spreading documents across my study desk. 5 client proposals submitted, 3 meetings scheduled, 2 contracts pending. "Impressive," I acknowledged. "And what about her personal activities?" Sarah's expression tightened. "That's why I came in person. Look at this." She produced printouts of emails between Vanessa and Brenner and Associates. The most recent exchange made my blood run cold. Subject: Trust Penetration Strategy, Maxwell Foundation Connection Ms. Callaway, our preliminary investigation confirms your suspicions. The Maxwell Foundation appears to be controlled through a complex network of trusts and holding companies, but we've identified several potential links to your mother-in-law's financial holdings. With your authorization, we can proceed to the next phase of our investigation, which would include more aggressive information-gathering techniques. Please advise if you wish to proceed. Jonathan Brenner Vanessa's response had been immediate. "Mr. Brenner, proceed with all necessary measures. I need complete visibility into these financial structures before moving forward with my broader strategy. Time is a factor, Please prioritize this investigation, Vanessa Calloway. She's escalating, I said quietly, studying the exchange. Moving from curiosity to active investigation. There's more, Sarah continued, producing another document. She's scheduled a private meeting with Catherine Benson, her mentor from the program, for tomorrow. But she's also been researching Catherine's background, apparently trying to establish connections between Catherine and your old investment firm. Vanessa was pulling at threads, following connections, attempting to unravel the carefully constructed network I'd built around her business. She sensed the invisible hand guiding her success and was determined to identify it, not to acknowledge the help, but to leverage it for further gain. She's getting closer, I observed, but she doesn't have the full picture yet. What's our next move? Sarah asked. I considered our options, weighing risk against potential benefit. Let the meeting with Catherine proceed as scheduled. Brief Catherine to provide minimal information, enough to maintain Vanessa's interest but nothing substantive about the Foundation's governance or my involvement. And the legal investigation? A cold smile crossed my face. Let her continue, down that path. The more resources she commits to investigating me, the more comprehensive our documentation of her activities becomes. Every email, every legal consultation, every research query, all evidence of her true priorities. You're building a case, Sarah realized. I'm preparing for the inevitable confrontation, I corrected. When Vanessa finally discovers who's been funding her business, who's been orchestrating her success, who's been watching her investigate my assets while simultaneously accepting my help. I want the revelation to be on my terms, with irrefutable evidence of her duplicity. And Andrew? Sarah asked softly. How will this affect him? The question gave me pause. My son, kind, trusting, genuinely in love with a woman who viewed him primarily as access to wealth, would be devastated by the truth. But wouldn't that pain be preferable to a lifetime of manipulation and calculated exploitation? Andrew deserves to know who he married, I said finally. Not immediately, but eventually, when the time is right. As Sarah departed with her instructions, I returned to the window overlooking my garden. The Japanese maple Gregory had planted was catching the late afternoon light, its leaves blazing crimson against the darkening sky. Some truths were like that. Sudden, brilliant illuminations that changed everything. Soon, Vanessa would face such a truth. The revelation that her business success had been engineered by the mother-in-law she disdained. That her investigation into my assets had been monitored from the beginning. That her every move in this elaborate chess match had been anticipated, documented, and allowed to proceed for my own strategic purposes. And when that moment came, when the carefully constructed facade crumbled around her, I would finally learn who Vanessa Calloway truly was, by watching how she handled the fall. The meeting between Vanessa and Catherine Benson took place at an upscale cafe downtown, neutral territory, carefully selected for its privacy and ambiance. Through our monitoring systems, I listened to their conversation in real time from my home office. Your progress with Calloway marketing has been remarkable, Catherine observed, sipping her espresso. 3 major clients in your first month of operation is practically unheard of for a new agency. Vanessa smiled, projecting humble confidence. I've been fortunate with timing and connections. The Maxwell Foundation's mentorship program has been invaluable. Indeed, Catherine agreed. The foundation has a knack for identifying promising entrepreneurs. I've been curious about that, Vanessa said, her tone deliberately casual. How exactly does the selection process work? It seems remarkably precise. Catherine maintained the script we'd prepared. The foundation uses a multi-layered evaluation process. Applications are reviewed by a committee of business leaders with relevant expertise. And who established these protocols? Vanessa pressed. The founding donor must have had significant business experience. The foundation's governance structure is quite private, Catherine deflected smoothly. Many wealthy benefactors prefer anonymity with their philanthropic ventures. Of course, Vanessa nodded, momentarily thwarted but clearly not deterred. I'm just fascinated by effective organizational design. My mother-in-law has mentioned the Maxwell name in passing. I wondered if there might be a family connection. The lie was delivered seamlessly. I had never discussed the Maxwell Foundation with Vanessa, never mentioned my maiden name in connection with any business venture. Family names do tend to reappear across generations, Catherine replied non-committally. Now about your marketing strategy for Meridian Technologies. The conversation shifted to business matters, with Catherine providing precisely the level of mentorship we'd agreed upon. Useful but generic advice that Vanessa could have received from any experienced marketing executive. Nothing that revealed our connection or the orchestrated nature of Vanessa's opportunities. After they parted, Catherine called me directly. She's fishing for information, Margaret, very deliberately. Did she mention her legal investigation? I asked. Not explicitly, but she asked if I had any investment experience, whether I'd ever worked with private equity firms, circling the topic without directly approaching it. Trying to establish connections between you, the foundation, and my former business, I concluded. Continue as planned. Professional mentorship without personal revelation. Let's see how far she's willing to go to uncover the truth. The answer came sooner than expected. That evening, Sarah forwarded an alarming email exchange between Vanessa and Brenner and Associates. Mr. Brenner, following our discussion about more aggressive investigation methods, I'd like to move forward with digital surveillance of the Maxwell Foundation's communication channels. If, as we suspect, Margaret Calloway is controlling the foundation through shell companies, electronic communications between board members should provide confirmation. Please advise on legality and process. Vanessa Brenner's response was measured, but concerning Ms. Calloway. While we can pursue certain digital monitoring strategies within legal boundaries, I must caution against any approach that could potentially violate privacy laws or electronic communication protections. Instead, I recommend focusing on public records and regulatory filings, where connections can often be established through pattern recognition and cross-referencing. We can discuss specific legal methods during our meeting tomorrow. Jonathan Brenner. She's contemplating electronic surveillance, I said to Sarah over the phone. Of the foundation. Of me. That crosses a significant line, Sarah agreed. Should we confront her now? I considered the question carefully. No. Let her meeting with Brenner proceed. But activate our secondary security protocols immediately. And contact Richard. We need to ensure the Foundation's communications are completely secure. What about Andrew? Sarah asked. Should we tell him what his wife is considering? Not yet, I decided, though the question troubled me deeply. Let's see if she actually pursues these surveillance methods. Contemplating crossing a line is different from actually crossing it. But the evidence was mounting that Vanessa's determination to access my wealth extended beyond simple ambition into potentially illegal territory. The calculated nature of her approach, building her business with my covert help while simultaneously investigating my finances, revealed a disturbing pattern of duplicity. The following day brought another development. Our monitoring of Calloway Marketing's operations revealed that Vanessa had hired a new employee, a junior account manager named David Chen, whose resume included a brief internship at my former investment firm 10 years earlier. It can't be coincidental, Sarah noted when she reported the hiring. She's bringing in someone with a potential connection to your past business activities. Check his background thoroughly, I instructed. Let's see if there's any current connection between Chen and Brenner and Associates. The investigation confirmed our suspicions. David Chen had briefly consulted for Brenner's firm 6 months earlier, a connection deliberately omitted from the resume he'd submitted to Calloway Marketing. He had been planted, likely to gather information about Vanessa's business operations, her clients, her funding sources. She's using her own business, the business we're covertly funding, as a base for investigating me, I realized, admiring the layers of irony despite the seriousness of the situation. Should we block the hire? Sarah asked. No, I decided after consideration. Let it proceed, but ensure our funding mechanisms are completely insulated from discovery. And let's give Mr. Chen something interesting to find, a subtle breadcrumb that leads in the right direction without revealing everything. We crafted a carefully worded email from one of our shell companies to Callaway Marketing's accounting department, referencing a special business development grant from a foundation with tenuous connections to the Maxwell Foundation. Nothing that directly exposed my involvement, but enough to pique interest and encourage further investigation. The bait was taken almost immediately. Within hours of the email being processed by Callaway Marketing Systems, David Chen had forwarded it to his personal account, and from there to Brenner and Associates. Our monitoring captured the accompanying message, found potential connection between Callaway Marketing Funding and Target Foundation. Investigating further. The game accelerates, I murmured, reviewing the exchange. Vanessa was deploying increasingly aggressive tactics, corporate espionage essentially, to uncover my financial connections to her business. What would she do when she finally discovered the truth? How would she react to learning that every aspect of her business success had been orchestrated by the mother-in-law she disdained? That every client, every opportunity, every lucky break had been carefully engineered by me? And more importantly, how would Andrew respond when he learned of his wife's duplicity? The question weighed heavily as I prepared for a small dinner party that weekend, a long-standing tradition with Eleanor and 2 other close friends from my university days. These quarterly gatherings had been a fixture in my life for decades, a space where I could speak freely among women who had known me since before my wealth, before my marriage, before the carefully constructed public persona I'd developed throughout my business career. She hired a corporate spy, Eleanor repeated incredulously when I shared the latest developments. Your own daughter-in-law, investigating you while accepting your financial support. All while mocking me behind my back, I added, refilling our wine glasses. The old lady with her mothball smell, secretly funding the business she's so proud of. When will you tell Andrew? Asked Patricia, a retired judge who had been in my freshman dormitory at Northwestern. He deserves to know who he married. When I have irrefutable evidence, I replied. When I can show him not just my suspicions, but documented proof of Vanessa's true character. And how will you reveal it? Inquired Diane, completing our quartet. A psychologist by training, she'd always been the most insightful about human motivation. The manner of revelation matters as much as the content, Margaret. I'm still determining that, I acknowledged. The timing needs to be perfect. A moment when Vanessa has committed herself fully to her investigation, when she's invested maximum resources in uncovering my connection to her business. You want her to realize not just that you funded her success, Diane observed, but that you knew she was investigating you all along, that you were always 3 steps ahead. Precisely, I confirmed. Only then will the lesson be complete. What lesson? Patricia pressed. What do you hope to accomplish with this elaborate scheme? I considered the question carefully, aware that my friends were evaluating not just my strategy, but my motivations. I want to understand who Vanessa truly is, whether there's any substance behind the ambition, any genuine feeling behind the calculation. And if there isn't, Eleanor asked quietly, if she's exactly what you fear, a calculating opportunist who married Andrew for his potential inheritance. Then I protect my son, I said simply. I ensure that his financial future is secure, regardless of what happens with his marriage. And if there is more to her, Diane challenged, if beneath the ambition and social climbing, there's a woman, who genuinely loves Andrew? The possibility gave me pause. Despite all evidence to the contrary, I wanted to believe that Vanessa valued my son for more than his access to wealth, that somewhere in her strategic approach to life, genuine emotion existed. Then perhaps reconciliation is possible, I conceded. But only after truth and accountability. The conversation shifted to lighter topics as dinner progressed, but the question lingered in my mind. What if Vanessa's investigation stemmed not just from greed, but from insecurity? What if her fixation on financial security reflected past hardships rather than simple avarice? I resolved to look deeper into Vanessa's background. My initial investigation before her marriage to Andrew had been cursory, enough to ensure there were no criminal concerns or dangerous associations, but not a comprehensive examination of her formative experiences or family dynamics. The following morning, I instructed Sarah to compile a more thorough profile. I want to understand her motivations, not just her actions. Family history, early influences, financial challenges, anything that might explain her preoccupation with wealth and security. Looking for mitigating factors? Sarah asked perceptively. Looking for context, I clarified. Understanding an opponent's motivations provides strategic advantage. But privately, I acknowledged that something more complicated was at work. Despite Vanessa's investigation, despite her casual cruelty, despite her apparent view of Andrew as a stepping stone to wealth, she was my son's choice. He loved her, saw something in her worth committing to. And that fact demanded deeper consideration. Sarah's research arrived that afternoon, a comprehensive dossier on Vanessa Parker Calloway, including details I hadn't previously known. Her father had abandoned the family when she was 7, leaving her mother to raise 3 children on a teacher's salary. Financial insecurity had been a constant. Eviction notices, utility shutoffs, secondhand clothes, free school lunches. Despite these challenges, Vanessa had excelled academically, securing scholarships to attend a prestigious university. Her first post-college position had been at a marketing firm that collapsed in a financial scandal, leaving employees without final paychecks or promised bonuses. She'd rebounded, working her way through progressively more responsible positions, building the professional reputation that had eventually brought her into Andrew's social circle. The picture that emerged was more nuanced than I'd expected. A driven woman whose ambition had been forged in genuine hardship, whose fixation on financial security might reflect early experiences of instability rather than simple greed. But the dossier also revealed a pattern of strategic social advancement, careful cultivation of influential connections, romantic relationships, with increasingly successful men, a calculated approach to career development that prioritized connections over experience. Vanessa had attended a fundraising gala alone, wearing borrowed designer clothes she couldn't afford, and had deliberately positioned herself to meet Andrew, researching his background, his interests, his family connections before their chance encounter. Our own relationship had been engineered from the beginning, not by mutual affection or shared values, but by Vanessa's recognition that Andrew's mother represented potential access to wealth and status. The revelation clarified rather than softened my understanding of my daughter-in-law. Her behavior was comprehensible, perhaps even rational given her background, but it remained calculating, strategic, fundamentally self-interested. My phone rang just as I finished reviewing the dossier. Andrew's name flashed on the screen. "Mom," he began without preamble, his voice tight with tension. "Do you know anything about the Maxwell Foundation?" My heart skipped. Had Vanessa already discovered the connection? Had she confronted Andrew with suspicions about my involvement in her business? The charitable organization? I replied carefully. "I've heard of it, certainly. Why do you ask?" "Vanessa's been acting strange lately," he said. "Working late, having secretive phone calls, meeting with lawyers she won't explain. When I asked what was going on, she mentioned investigating the foundation's connection to some business grants she received. So she hadn't told him about investigating me specifically. not yet. But her behavior was concerning him enough to reach out independently. Many foundations maintain privacy around their donations, I offered neutrally. Perhaps she's simply trying to understand the source of her good fortune. That's what she said, Andrew acknowledged. But it feels excessive, like she's obsessed with tracing the money back to its original source. She was up until 2 a.m. researching trust structures and ownership frameworks. Starting a business is stressful, I suggested. Perhaps she's being particularly diligent about understanding her financing. Maybe, he conceded, though his tone suggested continued concern. It's just, she keeps mentioning your maiden name, Maxwell, asking if you've ever talked about family foundations or investment trusts. So Vanessa was attempting to extract information about me from Andrew directly, a new angle in her investigation. That seems an odd coincidence, I remarked mildly, though Maxwell is a fairly common name. That's what I told her, Andrew said. Anyway, I just wanted to check if you knew anything about it. She's been so focused on this lately. It's like everything else has taken a back seat, including us. The hurt in his voice was palpable, reinforcing my determination to protect him from Vanessa's machinations. I'm sure it's just new business anxiety, I reassured him. But if you're concerned, perhaps you should have a direct conversation about your priorities as a couple. You're right, he sighed. Thanks, Mom. Love you. Love you too, I replied, ending the call with a deep sense of unease. Vanessa's investigation was affecting her relationship with Andrew, creating tension, raising questions, distracting from their connection. Protecting my son's financial future was important, but protecting his emotional well-being mattered more. Perhaps it was time to accelerate my timeline, to create a situation where Vanessa would be forced to reveal her true priorities, her business, her investigation, or her marriage. I called Sarah immediately. Schedule a board meeting for the Maxwell Foundation next week and ensure that all 7 of Callaway Marketing's current clients receive the same information simultaneously, that their contracts are being reviewed as part of a standard foundation governance procedure. Creating pressure, Sarah observed. Creating clarity, I corrected. Vanessa will have to decide whether to pursue her investigation openly, potentially jeopardizing her client relationships, or to protect her business interests by temporarily suspending her search for answers. And if she chooses the investigation over business stability, then we'll know exactly where her priorities lie, I replied grimly. And so will Andrew. The strategy was implemented immediately. By the following morning, all 7 clients had received identical notifications, formal letters on Maxwell Foundation letterhead, stating that as part of routine governance procedures, all vendor relationships facilitated through Foundation initiatives were under standard review. The notifications were carefully worded to avoid any suggestion of problems or concerns, simply standard business practice for grant-making organizations. But they created an immediate ripple effect. Within hours, 5 of the 7 clients had contacted Callaway Marketing seeking reassurance about their contracts and services. Our monitoring systems captured Vanessa's increasingly frantic responses, professional emails projecting confidence, while assuring clients that everything was proceeding normally, followed by private messages to Brenner and Associates revealing her growing alarm. This can't be coincidental. Every client received the same foundation notice simultaneously. Someone knows we're investigating. We need to accelerate or withdraw immediately. Brenner's response was cautious. If your suspicions are correct and Margaret Callaway is indeed monitoring your activities, proceeding with aggressive investigation tactics could have significant legal and professional repercussions. I recommend a strategic pause to reassess. Vanessa's reply revealed her determination. No, we're too close to establishing the connection. The foundation review creates urgency. If Margaret is behind my business, funding, this could be an attempt to pressure me into dropping the investigation. I won't be manipulated. She was partially correct, of course. I was indeed attempting to force her hand, to create a situation where her true priorities would be revealed through action rather than intention. Would she protect her business interests by temporarily suspending her investigation? Or would she pursue her search for my financial connections at the potential cost of client relationships and business stability? The answer came that evening when our monitoring systems captured a new email from Vanessa to Brenner. Proceed with all investigative measures we discussed. I need conclusive evidence of Margaret's connection to the Maxwell Foundation before the EI. Board meeting next week. Whatever it costs, whatever it takes, find me proof. So she had chosen the investigation over business stability, prioritizing her search for my wealth over the immediate security of the enterprise I was secretly funding. The revelation was disappointing, but not surprising. Even more revealing was her failure to discuss the situation with Andrew. Our surveillance showed no messages between them about the Foundation review, no conversations about the potential business implications, no consultation about their shared future. Vanessa was operating independently, pursuing her investigation without involving the husband whose interests she claimed to be protecting. Another piece of evidence regarding her true priorities. I reviewed the latest developments with Sarah in my study the following morning. She's committed now, I observed, instructed Brenner to pursue all investigative measures regardless of cost or risk, including potential electronic surveillance. Sarah noted with concern, our security systems will prevent actual intrusion, but the attempt itself crosses legal boundaries. Which is precisely why we needed documentation, I replied. Vanessa is now on record authorizing potentially illegal methods to investigate my finances, not for Andrew's protection, not for family security, but for her own strategic advantage. The meeting with Brenner is scheduled for 3 o'clock today, Sarah confirmed. Based on their email exchanges, he'll be presenting options for accessing Foundation communications and financial records. Ensure all monitoring systems are active, I instructed. I want complete documentation of whatever methods they discuss and whatever decisions Vanessa makes. And after we have that documentation? Sarah asked. What's the endgame here, Margaret? I considered the question carefully, weighing competing priorities, my desire to protect Andrew, my determination to expose Vanessa's true character, my responsibility to manage the situation with minimal collateral damage. Once we have conclusive evidence of Vanessa's willingness to pursue unethical or illegal methods, I decided, we proceed to direct confrontation, but on my terms, in a controlled environment, with Andrew present as witness. The pieces were moving toward an inevitable confrontation, a moment of truth where facades would crumble, motivations would be exposed, and the true nature of Vanessa's relationship with my family would be revealed. All orchestrated by the old lady who smelled like mothballs and dusty potpourri. The meeting between Vanessa and Jonathan Brenner took place in a private conference room at his law firm, a sleek space designed for discretion, with soundproofing and electronic security measures to prevent surveillance. Ironic, considering the topic of discussion. Thanks to our own monitoring systems, legitimate ones, installed with proper authorization in the devices and accounts directly under my control, I received a real-time transcript of their conversation. These are the options, Brenner explained, sliding a document across the polished table. From least to most aggressive. But I must emphasize, Ms. Calloway, that the methods in the final section enter legally questionable territory. Vanessa's response was immediate. I'm not concerned about aggressive approaches at this point. The Foundation Board meeting is in 5 days. I need conclusive evidence of Margaret's control before then. May I ask why this has become so urgent? Brenner inquired. Your mother-in-law's financial arrangements, whatever they may be, have presumably existed for some time. Because she's testing me, Vanessa replied, her voice hardening. The synchronized client reviews, the increased Foundation scrutiny of my business, it's not coincidental. She knows I'm investigating, and she's applying pressure. All the more reason to proceed with caution, Brenner advised. If Margaret Calloway has resources substantial enough to control the Maxwell Foundation through multiple shell companies, she likely has sophisticated security measures in place as well. I'm counting on it, Vanessa countered. Security systems leave digital footprints, access points, vulnerabilities. You're suggesting we actively attempt to breach her security protocols? Brenner sounded alarmed. That would cross the line from aggressive investigation into potential cybercrime. There was a pause, a moment of hesitation before Vanessa responded. What about initiating contact with former employees of her investment firm? People who might have direct knowledge of her financial structures? A slight retreat from potentially illegal electronic intrusion to merely unethical information gathering. Still problematic, but less explicitly criminal. That remains within legal boundaries, Brenner acknowledged, though it could create social complications if discovered. Social complications are manageable, Vanessa dismissed. I need information more than I need Margaret's approval. The conversation continued, detailing specific investigative approaches, most technically legal but ethically dubious, none showing any concern for family loyalty or personal boundaries. By the time the meeting concluded, Vanessa had authorized Brenner to proceed with 3 specific tactics: contacting former employees of my investment firm under false pretenses, investigating the personal financial records of known Maxwell Foundation board members, and placing David Chen in position to access additional internal documents at Calloway Marketing. I ended the monitoring session, my decision made. The evidence was clear, the pattern established. Vanessa was willing to pursue increasingly aggressive methods to trace my financial connections to her business, not out of concern for Andrew's interests, not for family security, but for her own strategic advantage. It was time for the confrontation. I'd been planning, but with one modification to my original strategy. Andrew needed to witness his wife's true priorities directly, not through evidence I presented. I called Sarah immediately. Schedule a meeting at my home office, tomorrow evening. Invite Vanessa directly. Tell her the Maxwell Foundation's primary benefactor wishes to discuss her business performance review. Not through the formal foundation channels? Sarah confirmed. No. Direct contact. Let her think this is her opportunity to meet the mysterious benefactor she's been investigating. And Andrew? Tell him nothing, I instructed. But ensure he arrives at my home tomorrow evening on some pretext. I want him present when Vanessa discovers the truth. He'll be hurt, Sarah warned gently. Better a clean wound than slow poisoning, I replied. Better to face the truth now than spend years wondering where his wife's true loyalties lie. The following day passed with meticulous preparation. Sarah assembled the complete dossier documenting my involvement in Calloway Marketing. Every dollar invested, every opportunity engineered, every connection facilitated. Simultaneously, we compiled evidence of Vanessa's investigation, her consultations with Brenner, her authorization of questionable investigative tactics, her focus on financial gain over family loyalty. By late afternoon, my home office was prepared for the evening's confrontation, documents organized, security systems activated, contingencies anticipated. Eleanor arrived at 5 o'clock, concerned but supportive. Are you sure about this approach? She asked as we reviewed the final arrangements. It seems deliberately traumatic for Andrew. The trauma already exists, I replied. I'm simply bringing it to the surface where it can be addressed honestly. If their marriage is strong enough to survive this revelation, they'll rebuild with a foundation of truth rather than manipulation. And if it's not, then Andrew deserves the opportunity to make informed choices about his future, I said firmly. Before children are involved, before more years are invested in a relationship built on calculation rather than love. At precisely 6:30, my security system announced Vanessa's arrival. She was 15 minutes early, eager for the meeting she believed would connect her directly with the Foundation's primary benefactor. Send her to the garden patio, I instructed the housekeeper. Offer refreshments. I'll join her shortly. From my study window, I watched Vanessa pace the stone patio, checking her appearance in her compact mirror, straightening her already immaculate suit jacket. She'd dressed strategically for this meeting, professional yet approachable, ambitious yet respectful. The perfect image for impressing a potential benefactor. At 6:45, the security system announced Andrew's arrival, right on schedule. Sarah had arranged for him to drop off some financial documents his mother had requested. Send him directly to the patio, I instructed. Tell him I'll join them momentarily. Through the security cameras, I watched their encounter. Vanessa's shock at seeing her husband. Andrew's confusion at finding his wife at his mother's home. Their awkward exchange as each tried to understand the other's presence. It was time. I gathered the dossiers, one documenting my support of Callaway marketing, the other detailing Vanessa's investigation into my finances, and made my way to the garden. Andrew, Vanessa, I greeted them calmly. Thank you both for coming. Please, let's sit down. We have important matters to discuss. Confusion and wariness crossed their faces as they took seats at the patio table. Vanessa recovered first, professional mask sliding into place. Margaret, I was told I'd be meeting with the Maxwell Foundation's primary benefactor, she began. Carefully. And so you are, I replied simply, watching comprehension dawn in her eyes. You? She whispered, color draining from her face. You're the Foundation's primary donor? I established the Maxwell Foundation 15 years ago, I confirmed, using my maiden name to maintain privacy while supporting causes and individuals I deemed worthwhile. Andrew looked between us, confusion deepening. Mom, what's going on? Why would Vanessa be meeting with the Foundation's benefactor? Because the Maxwell Foundation has been supporting Callaway marketing since its inception, I explained gently. Through grants, mentorship, client connections, and various other mechanisms. That's not possible, Vanessa protested, though her voice lacked conviction. I earned those opportunities. The mentorship acceptance, the client connections, those came through my own merit. Your talents are genuine, I acknowledged, opening the first dossier. But the opportunities were carefully orchestrated. The building lease with its remarkable terms, the renovation discounts, the equipment grants, the first major client, the networking connections, all facilitated through my network of companies and foundations. I slid the documentation across the table, contracts, emails, financial transfers, all revealing the elaborate support structure I'd built around Vanessa's business. Why? Andrew asked, his voice barely audible. Why would you secretly fund Vanessa's company without telling either of us? Initially, to test her business acumen, I replied honestly. To see if she had genuine talent worth supporting. And she does, I added, nodding toward Vanessa. Your proposals are excellent, your client management skilled, your marketing strategies effective. With or without my support, you would likely have succeeded eventually. Then why the elaborate scheme? Vanessa demanded, professional composure, cracking as she scanned the documents. Why not offer support openly? Because I wanted to understand your character as well as your capabilities, I said evenly. And recent events have been particularly illuminating. I opened the second dossier, revealing printouts of her emails with Brenner and Associates, transcripts of their meetings, documentation of her increasingly aggressive investigation into my finances. You've been monitoring me, Vanessa accused, voice shaking with anger and embarrassment. Invading my privacy, reading my emails. I've been monitoring the business activities I was funding, I corrected. And documenting your investigation into my personal finances, an investigation conducted while simultaneously accepting my support. Andrew stared at the evidence before him, expression shifting from confusion to disbelief to pain. You've been investigating my mother's finances? Hiring lawyers to trace her assets? Why would you do that? Vanessa's eyes darted between Andrew and me, calculating even now. I was protecting our interests, she attempted, ensuring our future security. After discovering the Maxwell connection to my business funding, I became concerned about potential strings attached. The timeline doesn't support that explanation, I noted calmly. Your consultations with Brenner began before you received foundation mentorship, before you noticed any connection between the Maxwell name and your business activities. And these methods, Andrew interjected, scanning the documentation with growing horror. Contacting former employees under false pretenses, investigating board members' personal finances, hiring someone to access internal company documents. This goes far beyond protecting our interests. You don't understand the pressure I've been under, Vanessa insisted, desperation entering her voice. Building a business from nothing, securing our financial future? While spending $3,000 on a handbag, I interjected quietly. While mocking me for smelling like old people in my own home, while investigating my finances even as you benefited from them. Andrew's head snapped up. You said, what about my mother? The moment of truth had arrived. Vanessa's expression shifted rapidly, shock, calculation, desperate recalibration. It was a misunderstanding, she attempted. A joke taken out of context. I heard you clearly, I interrupted. In my kitchen, with your colleagues, laughing about my old person smell, like mothballs and dusty potpourri, I believe were your exact words. Andrew stood abruptly, distress evident in every line of his body. I need some air, he muttered, moving toward the garden path. I need to think. As he walked away, Vanessa turned to me, anger replacing her previous calculation. You've destroyed everything, she hissed. Orchestrated this entire scenario to humiliate me. I created an opportunity for truth, I corrected. How that truth affects your marriage depends entirely on what Andrew values most. Your ambition, or your integrity. You never gave me a chance, she accused. You judged me from the beginning. I gave you every chance, I countered. I funded your business. I connected you with clients. I provided opportunities most entrepreneurs would consider miraculous. And through it all, I watched to see what you would do with those opportunities, whether you would build something worthwhile, something that would benefit Andrew as well as yourself. And did I fail your little test? Vanessa asked bitterly. The business succeeded, I acknowledged. Your professional capabilities are impressive, but when pressed, when forced to choose between protecting your client relationships and pursuing your investigation into my finances, you chose the investigation. When faced with ethical boundaries in that investigation, you authorized increasingly aggressive methods. When presenting your business success to Andrew, you claimed full credit without acknowledging the support that made it possible. So this was all about your ego, she concluded. You couldn't stand not getting credit for my success. This was about understanding whether you valued Andrew, his mother, and his family for more than potential financial gain, I corrected. And you've answered that question conclusively. Andrew returned to the patio, his expression composed but strained. I've been thinking about what matters most in a marriage, he said quietly. Trust, respect, shared values. Vanessa moved toward him, reaching for his hand. Andrew, I can explain everything. The investigation was for us, for our future together. Was mocking my mother behind her back also for our future? He asked, pulling away from her touch. Was hiring lawyers to investigate her finances without discussing it with me part of our shared journey? You don't understand business, Vanessa insisted. Sometimes you have to be aggressive to protect your interests. Our interests, Andrew emphasized. Not yours alone. Ours to discuss, to decide together, to pursue with integrity. The business is still viable, I interjected, addressing them both. The clients are real, the contract's legitimate, the service is valuable. Callaway Marketing can continue without my involvement if you choose. But the foundation review? Vanessa questioned. The client notifications? A test, I acknowledged, to see where your priorities lay when faced with potential business disruption. You chose investigation over client stability, financial discovery over business security. Andrew shook his head, disappointment evident. All this time, I thought, we were building something together, but you were pursuing your own agenda, regardless of how it affected our relationship. I was ambitious, Vanessa admitted. Focused, perhaps too strategic at times, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. Love requires respect, Andrew replied, quietly. For me? For my family? For the values I hold dear? I'm not seeing much evidence of that respect in these documents. The conversation continued as twilight deepened into evening, painful truths emerging, defenses crumbling, fundamental differences in values and priorities becoming impossible to ignore. By the time Vanessa departed, alone, in a rideshare vehicle, rather than with Andrew, the shape of the future had become clear. Their marriage might survive this revelation, but it would never be the same. The facade had crumbled, revealing the transactional foundation beneath. Andrew remained, sitting silently beside me on the patio as stars appeared overhead. Did you have to be so dramatic about it? He finally asked, a hint of his father's dry humor surfacing despite the pain. Would you have believed anything less? I replied honestly. Would partial revelations have convinced you of the pattern I was seeing? He sighed, acknowledging the point. I still love her, he admitted. Despite everything. I know, I said softly. Love rarely responds to logical evidence. But I don't think I can trust her, he continued. Not with my future. Not with potential children. Not with the partnership I thought we were building. I remained silent, allowing him to process the painful realizations at his own pace. Was any of her success real? He asked eventually. Or was it all your orchestration? Both, I replied thoughtfully. The opportunities were engineered, but her talent is genuine. She has the skills to build a successful business. What she lacks is the character to build a successful life. Andrew nodded slowly. Thank you for the truth, even though it hurts. Truth often does, I acknowledged, but healing can't begin without it. We sat together as night settled fully over the garden, mother and son united in painful understanding. Whatever happened next, whether Andrew and Vanessa attempted reconciliation or proceeded to separation, the relationship would be founded on truth rather than calculation, on genuine understanding rather than strategic manipulation. 3 months later, I sat across from Vanessa in a different setting, a mediation room where we were finalizing the transition of Callaway Marketing's ownership. Following a trial separation, Andrew had filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences in values and priorities. Vanessa, surprisingly, had not contested the decision, perhaps recognizing that the foundation of trust necessary for their marriage had been irreparably broken. The business valuation seems fair, she acknowledged, reviewing the documents before us. You're being more generous than required. The business has legitimate value, I replied evenly. Your work created that value, regardless of the circumstances. Under the agreement we'd negotiated, I would purchase Callaway Marketing at market valuation, allowing Vanessa to emerge from the divorce with significant financial resources to begin again elsewhere. The company would continue under new management, preserving the jobs created and the client relationships established. Why didn't you just confront me directly? Vanessa asked suddenly. When you first heard me making those comments in your kitchen, why the elaborate scheme? I considered the question carefully. Because a single incident doesn't reveal character. A pattern of choices does. I wanted to understand who you truly were, not just in a moment of thoughtless cruelty, but through sustained decision-making when faced with opportunity, temptation, and ethical boundaries. And your conclusion? that you're extraordinarily talented but fundamentally transactional in your approach to relationships, I said honestly, including your marriage to my son. Vanessa didn't dispute the assessment. You know, in some ways, we're quite similar, she observed. Strategic, calculating, willing to play the long game. The difference lies in purpose, I countered. Strategy, in service of protecting family, has different moral implications than strategy in service of personal gain. A matter of perspective, she shrugged, signing the final document. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps the elaborate game I'd played, testing her, documenting her choices, orchestrating her revelation, reflected my own capacity for strategic manipulation. Perhaps the old woman with the mothball smell was more similar to her ambitious daughter-in-law than either would comfortably admit. But as I watched Vanessa depart for the last time, elegant, composed, already planning her next strategic advance in life, I remained convinced of one crucial difference between us. I had used my resources, my connections, my strategic thinking to protect someone I loved unconditionally. She had used her talents, her ambition, her calculation to advance herself, regardless of the cost to others. And in that fundamental distinction lay the difference between strategy and scheme, between protection and predation. Andrew was healing, slowly, rebuilding his life with a new awareness of both his worth and his vulnerability. Our relationship had deepened through shared pain and honest conversation. As for me, I continued managing my investments, supporting causes I valued, and using my resources to protect those I loved, no longer from behind an elaborate facade of shell companies and foundations, but with transparent purpose and clear intention. The scent of mothballs and dusty potpourri had faded from my home, replaced by fresh flowers from my garden and the occasional aroma of baking when Andrew visited. For dinner, the old lady smell that had so offended Vanessa's delicate sensibilities was gone, if it had ever truly existed beyond her imagination. What remained was the wisdom accumulated through decades of observation and experience. The understanding that true character is revealed not in words but in choices, not in intentions but in actions, not in momentary kindness, but in sustained integrity. A wisdom worth more than any financial empire I'd built. A wisdom I hoped Andrew would carry forward as he rebuilt his life on foundations of truth rather than calculation. A wisdom that smelled, perhaps, a little bit like mothballs and dusty potpourri, but all the more valuable for its aged complexity.